Hey everybody, let's demyth one of the biggest questions we get online and with our students, whether you should do IELTS or CELPIP. Both of these exams are good for immigration and they're good for education if you're entering in universities, especially in Canada. Now, I'm going to talk about three things. One is the modules, all the four modules. We'll compare them, talk about where you could score more potentially and which exam is a little bit harder than others in some modules, because it's not overall, it really depends on which module you're looking at. We're going to talk about revaluation because one exam has better revaluation chances than the other. And at the end, we're going to talk about a mental thing related to these exams, which really affects performance. You'll be surprised how much it will affect your performance if you take that into consideration. Let's talk about the total marks you need for immigration mostly. Mostly, it's best to consult an immigration consultant or a lawyer for this. If you don't have one, message us. Email is always in the description. We have our partners working in immigration consultancies and they can help you with this matter. So if you don't know that, find that out. But mostly, 90% of the times, people need a 7 band in IELTS and a 9 in CELPIP. So 7 in IELTS is equivalent to 9 in CELPIP. When we talk about overall difficulty, it's the same. That's going to be my very diplomatic answer, but let me break it down how, because it really depends on the person. Reading and listening, long story short, reading and listening difficulty level is the same, okay? There's no difference there. Writing and speaking is different. We'll talk about that. So long story short, reading and listening, really no huge difference, but let's get into more detail. In reading and CELPIP, you have 4 passages and they have all multiple choice questions. Now, if you're good in multiple choice questions, you should go for a CELPIP because in IELTS, you have a different type of, well, you have different sets of questions. You have true, false, multiple choice, list of headings, matching paragraphs, and so on. So you might have difficulty in some and efficiency in some, but if your multiple choice is the best strength, go with CELPIP. In IELTS reading, you rely a lot on keywords. So let me put it this way. IELTS reading is actually better for people who have weaker English because you rely on keywords. You can find a keyword in the question, go in the passage and find it. That way you can get an answer quick. And that's going to be better for you if you don't have good comprehension skills. In CELPIP, you kind of do the same thing, but you have to understand the passage. In CELPIP, a lot of questions are based on not just where did you find this answer, but how did you interpret it? How did the author say it? What is the feeling? What is the meaning behind it? So you really have to understand the passage properly. And if you cannot do that, CELPIP is not for you. IELTS is easier with the keywords. The other thing is IELTS is longer. So now comes speed. If your speed is slow in reading, go for CELPIP because the time in CELPIP is also lesser. So that's why I said it's pretty much similar, but the passages in CELPIP are way smaller. Like I think 1/3 of IELTS passages. So CELPIP there would be your friend if your reading is slow. But if your speed is fast, especially if you can scan fast and you can find keywords fast, IELTS might be a better choice. Let's talk about listening. One important thing in listening is the British accent, which is used in IELTS listenings. It is not used in CELPIP. CELPIP is based on the Canadian accent and the American accent. CELPIP is a Canadian exam. The C stands for Canada. So these things might not be a huge difference. Honestly, for me, I've never seen that because of the British accent, I couldn't get an answer correctly. It's never happened, but I've seen students seem to complain a lot about that. So if that is a problem, don't do IELTS, but if you can handle the British accent, honestly, the only confusing thing is the R. So it's like, instead of clear, like we say here in North America, they might say clear, right? So the R is like ah, okay? That's the only major difference, but everything else is pretty much the same thing. Other than that, the questions are in front of you when you're doing the IELTS listening, which means you can look at it and listen at the same time. For some people, that is easier to do. For me, it's actually easier to do that. CELPIP is a little bit harder because you have to listen, take notes, and then you get the questions after the listening has finished. So you have to rely on your notes and your memory to answer. So once again, it depends here what your skill is. Okay, I'm mainly a CELPIP teacher, but here I would go for IELTS because I can read and listen faster. Multitasking for me is easier versus going in CELPIP and remembering things from my mind and from my notes. That I think is harder for me. But again, that differentiates from individual to individual. So see what you are better at. Now, if you talk about difficulty, like how many people fail in IELTS reading, listening, and then CELPIP reading and listening, and when they go to the other exam, how much success do they have? In terms of equivalency, same thing. Almost like 90%, it's the same thing. There's no huge difference. People who fail in reading in CELPIP will fail in reading in IELTS as well. It's the different types of questions will demand different strengths, but it's really not a huge difference, okay? When we talk about writing and speaking, this is going to be the most important part of the video. That is where all this comes into play. IELTS writing is very difficult and CELPIP speaking is very difficult, okay? So if you are trying to get a 7 in IELTS, you will have friends too who will say this, we only get 6.5. So people in IELTS writing get stuck at 6.5. That is way harder than what most people think. IELTS writing needs to be perfect, no grammar mistakes, just 1 or 2 maximum, pretty difficult. You also need extremely good vocabulary, complex sentences, lessons for all these things, vocab, complex sentences, everything is on this channel. You can check this out, check out our videos. You'll learn everything there if you want to do IELTS writing. But you need all those things to have a good writing score because it's almost impossible for a lot of people to cross 6.5 in IELTS. IELTS speaking is way easier, on the other hand. People have a much better time in IELTS speaking than in CELPIP speaking. In IELTS speaking also, it's the natural component of you being able to talk to the other person face to face. You can use hand gestures as well if your English is weak. Hand gestures and tone help as well as the eye contact in communicating. So maybe that's the reason, but other than that too, IELTS speaking, the examiners, they mark it very leniently. So most people have no issue crossing a 7 there. Now let's turn over to CELPIP, and here the speaking is a nightmare. You don't have it face to face, it's all online. You record your responses, they're sent to the examiner. You don't have the opportunity of using hand gestures if your English is weak. You have your voice and tone only to rely, and their speaking criteria is hella difficult. If you miss the time, for example, you didn't finish on time on 2 or 3 questions, forget a 9. If you started the time has started, and you haven't spoken right away, you're taking a pause 5 to 10 seconds, forget a 9. If you have made more than 5 or 6 grammar mistakes in those 8 questions, forget a 9. And if you haven't used complex sentences, vocabulary, and not just a simple structure, but a more complex structure with good wordings and good sentences and phrases, if you haven't done that, forget a 9. So again, if you want to know how to get a 9 in CELPIP speaking, check out this channel. Mainly our videos are on CELPIP speaking, in fact. You will learn how to get a 9. There is a way, of course, but it is very difficult. On the other hand, CELPIP writing is easy, so people have a much easier time with CELPIP writing. Once again, you need the templates and structures for it. Check out our videos on CELPIP writing here at HZad Education. You will know and learn exactly how to do that. But people usually pass on CELPIP writing, and I'm going to say this is where people get stuck. So someone is doing IELTS, failing on writing, and they're like, okay, we're passing on speaking here. Our speaking is good. Let's go to CELPIP and try that. Now they will fail on speaking, and CELPIP writing they will pass. And that is where they juggle between both exams, and that is where it's a deadline, okay? There's not a third exam mostly. If you go for TOEFL, it's the worst. I don't even want to teach TOEFL anymore, and I don't have any TOEFL videos because it is a nightmare of an exam, way harder than IELTS and CELPIP. But the third thing, the best thing you can do is prepare. Again, with this channel, with our coaching, whatever help you need, we can help you out with that. But coaching and preparation and tutoring is the main resource to improve. Now, try all of that, and let's say you still fail. Let's talk about reevaluation. Reevaluation and IELTS. What I've heard a lot of students submitted for IELTS and CELPIP. What I've heard from IELTS is there is a 50-50 chance, just like in CELPIP, you have a 50-50 chance to get your score improved only if you think you have done a good job, okay? If you know you have done a crappy job, it's not a 50-50 chance. But if you think you've done a good job, you did great grammar, you proofread it, everything was okay, why did I get a low score? Apply for evaluation in IELTS. Most likely, you'll get a 0.5 band improvement, 0.5. Okay, I have not heard anyone get 1 band improvement. When we talk about CELPIP reevaluation, it's a little different. Okay, in CELPIP, people get 1 point increase. They can get that increase. I've heard 2 points increases. Most recently, I've started hearing 3-point increases. So people who got 8 in maybe speaking, in reevaluation got 11 in speaking. So for example, if I need a 9 in CELPIP speaking, okay, I got a 6. there's still hope for me. I can apply for evaluation and 6 can become a 9. So it's not a bad idea. But in IELTS, writing, if I'm at 5.5 and I need a 7, reevaluation is useless because I could maximum go from 5.5 to 6. Okay, it's not going to go to 7. So a 3-point jump is common in CELPIP, but not similarly in IELTS. So reevaluation wise, CELPIP wins. Finally, let's talk about a mental factor, which is a huge factor. So we've had students who have come to us with requests that I failed IELTS 4 times, I failed CELPIP 6 times, 7 times, whatever. A lot of times, yes, it's the exam, yes, it's your strengths and what kind of coaching you've had, but it's also a mindset. When you have been having all this demotivation and suffering from one exam, your 6th attempt or 7th attempt, all you think is, I'm going to fail again. And that's what usually happens. If you have been doing that, if you have a consistent pattern of failure on one exam, the best thing you can do is change the exam. Again, there are differences in CELPIP and IELTS, but sometimes changing the exam will give you so much motivation. It's going to give you such a fresh start that you're going to feel like this is my time, and your mind is going to start working very efficiently and give you that kind of confidence and motivation to practice that will deliver results once you switch the exam. It is not a structured concept that I'm saying here, it's mentality, but I've seen this work. I've seen this work with students who have had demotivation, switched their exams, and got their desired results. Sometimes that just does the trick. So that's the third thing I want to pay attention to, your mental activity and how your mind focuses and processes all these things and this information. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.